episode 7, Resolute TV. It's been a cracking week. We've just launched, or we're about to launch our book club, where we're going to do an author week in, week out. We've just had some amazing authors that have come forward wanting to participate in the project, which is really, really awesome for us. We're also releasing a segment which will go to air before this episode is released. We've called it the Paradigm Shift. And in it we're sort of having some pretty full-on discussions with some people who have been rebelling during the lockdowns. We've been busy here at Team Resolute TV, and obviously we've got a whole team that works on it. Okay, it's just 2 or 3 of us, but we're a team and we're working our bums off on this project, so we really hope you're appreciating our efforts. Part of tonight's episode, we've got Curt Mercadante, an amazing freedom fighter, freedom lover from America. He sensationally runs his own network of media companies in and around the freedom space. Dan Taxation is Stephan Livera is back. This will be the last little section of our original interview, but he also held a festival, a digital conference this week, or last week, sorry, called the Taxation is Theft Fest, which shortens for TIT Fest, was how he did it. So TIT Fest 2020, which was pretty cool from Dan, so check him out. Renne Altakrity was the mum in Sydney, who this week was, or last week, again I keep saying this week, last week, Renne was out in Sydney walking in a public space with her son. She was arrested, harassed, so was the son, by police who were failing to social distance, which I found fairly interesting. As always, we've got Stephen Wells, who he's had his own series of interesting things go on with his book, The Great Coronavirus Swindle. Mate, check out what he's got to say about that. It's unbelievable, the stuff going on with him. Stephan Livera and I chopping up a bit more about the laws that are coming in place around Bitcoin. And we've also got an amazing author who will be showcasing somewhat in the book club as well. But as an introduction, with Alex Shaw, he was talking to us from over the other side of the world, and he's written a really fantastic series of books, and we're lucky to have him on board as well. So guys, tune in now for Resolute TV, episode 7. 3 to go and we hit our magic 10, and we've ticked that off the box and we've achieved our goal. So thanks for the support, guys. So guys, here's my interview with the enthusiastic, intelligent, and exceptional Curt Mercadante. Jump on.
It's what concerns me. The actual virus itself doesn't concern me as much. And someone may say, "Oh well, if it infected someone in your family, you'd think differently." I would certainly be upset and sad if anyone in my family was deeply affected by COVID, and like hospitalized and all that. So that doesn't go without saying. But if someone I know got the flu and pneumonia and was dying, I watched my dad die of cancer. That doesn't necessarily mean, listen, we have 330 million people in America. I'm focused on the 330 or 329 million plus who are going to be impacted by a complete shutdown of the economy. Yeah. And, people don't really, we spent $2.9 trillion in an afternoon as part of a stimulus package, a month or so ago for this, right? My question for some people is, where does money come from? Where do you think money comes from? Like the government, where do they get the money from? You can't just keep it's bad enough if you keep passing these big spending bills when people are working and the economy is humming. When people aren't working and the economy isn't humming, the money is not coming into the government. Where do you think that all gets paid for? And we were on a horrible trajectory of debt anyways in this country. I interviewed a great book, by the way, Cooperation and Coercion. Where are they at? There we go.
There you go. Yeah.
It's by 2 libertarians, of course. And they have a chapter on the debt that they wrote this book last year before this came up. And they said, listen, we can still get it under wraps if we freeze spending for 4 years at where it's at now, and we continue growing at 4% a year. Well, that was before the pandemic. Now we're negative growth. So forget it. And so I just don't understand where people think money comes from, where economic growth comes from, and how you could possibly survive. And listen, it's going to be tragic. 1718, Spanish flu. We didn't shut down the economy. By the way, we also won World War I with the help of allies, but it was a global flu. And we said, listen, we got to keep moving forward. This is horrible. Right now, we have the technology, we have the know-how to walk and chew gum at the same time. And when we're doing a one-size-fits-all approach, while seniors are being murdered in nursing homes, you know, and part of it, in my opinion, is our complete inability to have discussions about anything that's remotely messy. So if you bring up the fact that in Louisiana, Reuters had a study or a report that 75% of the people who died were obese or morbidly obese. You can't even have that discussion because then you're anti-obese person and you're discriminatory. Right. You can't have a discussion. Well, the average age of people who have died is 80-something years old. You just want old people to die. Okay, yes, I just want old people to die. If that's what you think, then I can't have a legitimate, serious, honest discussion with you. So instead, we just say lock down everyone because we can't have discussions about people who in poor health who are most likely to die. Like all these celebrities say the virus doesn't discriminate. If you look at the numbers, it really, really does discriminate. You know, it's so...
it targets the elderly and the already sick.
Yeah.
Those with respiratory issues, you know, like it's a pretty, you know, if I was to get it, I would have a fairly confident position that I'd be all right. I'd come out of it with some new antibodies. Your DNA would sort of adjust as DNA is designed to do. And you'd be, okay, cool. I've had COVID, move on. And the people who really die and suffer are the elderly or those with respiratory issues.
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward. The numbers are there. I don't want old people to die. I like old people. I know old people, funnily enough. I even have grandparents and things that I don't want them to die. But in saying that, I don't want to shut down the entire economy. You know, and printing more money is not the solution, as I'm sure you'd probably agree. It just devalues the money that's out there. If there's more of it, it's less valuable and none of it adds up.
Yeah, I'm less concerned about making money now than about all the money I worked for over all these years being worth nothing because of inflation. But that requires a basic knowledge of how the economy works. And there's still people you ask, where do taxes come from? Or it's the government. No, it's from the productive work of people creating, you know, and it's, you can't have discussions with people who just simply either are so entrenched, don't understand what it is to have a real discussion, and just retreat into, you know, one reason I'm libertarian now, it's obviously policy issues, but everyone just retreats into this red versus blue. And, you know, I'm someone who thinks Trump is a buffoon. I don't like a lot of what he does. In the end, he locked us down and doesn't care about our deficit. It apparently doesn't appear to care about our deficit. There are some things he does that I like. I can admit that. But there are some things he does that I think are dead wrong. I can admit that. There were some things Obama did. He was a free trader. I like that. There were some things he did that I thought he was wrong. But the ability to say that, there are some people, if Trump went out and cured the lame tomorrow, they would complain that it took too long. I mean, but that, you know, and it was that way with Obama. Now you have this derangement syndrome of whoever's in party. And I'm like, listen, if you're going to be deranged about anyone, be deranged at all elected officials and realize that their number one job is to get reelected.
Yeah. And that's, look, 100%. And I mean, I've always found Trump, I sort of, relative to the alternatives, I always thought, oh, well, that'll be fantastic. And I also, to be perfectly blunt, I find him entertaining.
Oh, sure.
And he's certainly a completely different vibe to the usual show. So why not see what happens? But then in saying that, of course, the problem is the entire system is broken.
Right.
And talking to Jeffrey Tucker the other day, you know, he sort of suggested that the old red versus blue, we have it here. You guys have Democrats, Republicans. We have the Liberal Party and the Labor Party. Our Liberal Party is actually our Conservative Party.
Right. Well, the word liberal is traditionally flipped around, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's just funny how it works, I suppose. But it's our Liberal Party at the moment who's currently driving all these lockdowns. They've currently shut down the economy. They're doing you must get injected if you want to play football. They're doing all these totalitarian socialist style things. I'm convinced that there's no longer a difference between the two. I'd imagine in the US it's probably similar. You've just got people trying to keep hold of their position so they can get a cushy taxpayer-funded job. And as long as they can maintain that, if they can do a little bit of good while they're doing it, or what they decree is good, they'll continue to try and do so. I don't have much faith in any of them, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, if you really look over history, I mean, the differences between the two are here to here to here. Some people raise taxes, some people lower taxes. In the end, they're fighting over this like 1 inch area. And sometimes that inch makes a big deal. Hey, the tax cuts were really good to me. Loved it. Right. But I also am concerned about the spending. And no one appears to care about the spending at all, which is the biggest. It was before the pandemic, and now even more so, the biggest issue facing the future of the United States. And, especially with China looming on the horizon and everything that China is doing, that debt is a major burden and a major threat to not only the U.S., the United States debt is a threat to all our allies too. Well
and truly, our Australia's economy is intrinsically linked with both the US and China. So for however many years, we've always managed to maintain really, really good relations with both countries. We sell an awful lot of stuff to China, an awful lot of stuff from China. And then we have our what I would say is almost a natural relationship with the US. And all this stuff, every time something happens in China or the US, we feel it over here. It's fairly pronounced. Or very profound when you watch it unfold. So if you guys collapse, we're not going to be too far behind you.
Yeah.
And that's just an unfortunate fact of life. I'd like to see us become more independent as a nation. Like we've lost most of our manufacturing over the last 15 years. We have no auto industry anymore. Just last week, the Virgin Airlines, we've only got 2 major airlines in Australia. So Virgin have sort of collapsed. They're trying to work out either bailouts or buy-ins or who's going to sort of clean up things. So our national carriers, Qantas, they have a little bit more support and they're a little bit steadier, I suppose. But Virgin's sort of come right unstuck during this whole thing. And like we don't have an Australian car manufacturer anymore at all. So Ford and Holden used to be our 2 major car manufacturers over here. They're both gone. It's interesting to see, and you sort of the amount of jobs that go with those things, the amount of community support that happens. Having a big company working in your town, your city, your community drives so much other stuff, from kids playing sport through to the politics, to the roads getting fixed, to the parks getting done. There's just so much around that enterprise. And it's all gone, and we're losing it rapidly, and we're selling most of it out to China, best I can tell.
Yeah, same with us. And I interviewed his name's Robert Spalding, Brigadier General, retired Brigadier General. He wrote a book called The Stealth War. He was on the National Security Council, Chief China Strategist for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He got canned from the National Security Council for raising awareness and about the construction of our 5G network in the United States as it relates to China's ability to hack into it, or if one of the American telecoms partnered with China. Because as he lays out in his book, anyone who partners with China gets hacked. China gets the data. And China, their 5G network, he shared stories of being in Beijing. He was the attaché, the Defense Department chief attaché to China, and he said you go out on the street, and 5G enables just a heavy, aggressive facial recognition program everywhere there. So you just walk out on the street. You don't have to even take out your phone, and all you do is mouth into the wind, "I need an Uber," and an Uber shows up. He said he walked into a restaurant and they said, "Hello, Mr. Spalding, here's your meal." Like he had they knew who he was already through the facial recognition. Wow. And so, you know, if China, so he raised hackles over if China gets access to our facial recognition. We already know what Russia was doing in terms of driving mood and craziness through the Facebook news feed, right? With fake news.
Yeah.
If China, we know, and 2012, right? Facebook, that study was leaked in which they were messing. They did an experiment where they could raise the anxiety and misery levels, or make you happier based on what they put in your news feed. You know, they tested a certain number of people and showed them like dying pets, and all those people, they just triggered it. Well, we know that based on your Facebook news feed, someone can mess with your mood and your mental state. Well, China knows this. Russia knows this. If China also knows that and also has access to the 5G network, the facial recognition, and knows what stores you go to, they know what church you go to, they know when you go to your doctor, who your doctor is, all of that. Can you imagine the influence that they would have? Anyways, he raised awareness, got canned, but he talks about in that book, it's very scary. It's called Stealth War, about, you know, China has the market. I mean, not even close, on rare earth metals. Well, rare earth metals, that's our cell phones, our computers, all the cell phones in our military. Yep. The amount of our military components and our fighter jets, et cetera, weaponry, that's made in China.
Yeah.
You know, China has basically declared war on us. They flip a switch, done. So it'll be interesting to see what happens manufacturing wise after this pandemic, and it being with China, what happens in the US in terms of regulations, laws, et cetera, if the trade war gets pushed up, and if companies are like, listen, it's not worth it. I'm not going over there anymore. I got to bring it home. We'll see.
Yeah. Which, you know, that usually happens in line with as well cost. So depending on how hard your government and our government, because we do the same thing over here, makes it for these the American businesses or the Australian businesses to operate, the more inclined they are to go, well, it's cheaper just to get the Chinese to do it.
Yeah.
I see our minimum wage laws here as massively restrictive on business. But in saying, obviously, you know, the argument for minimum wage laws, I'm sure you have similar over there, is, oh, well, it protects people's ability to earn and pay, you know, their bills, et cetera, which is sort of, obviously it's important, but it also, depending on what that job is or where that job's located, which very rarely do I see come up when they discuss these things, the minimum wage blanket across Australia or across America is very irrelevant, I suspect, from where you currently live to the middle of New York City, I would imagine. The cost of living is so much different. So having a $10 an hour or $5 an hour minimum wage doesn't have the same effect in New York as it would where you sort of reside. Same as here. I mean, where I currently reside is $1 million a week cheaper than living in Sydney or Melbourne or wherever else. So a minimum wage blanket, I sort of think it's the wrong way to do it, but it also does create a layer of where people go, well, in China, we can pay somebody 10 cents an hour and we get the same work done, you know?
Yeah. And I think, you know, I saw someone and a friend of mine arguing for the minimum wage and saying, I couldn't survive on that. And if I had a job, I'd pay people more. And it's like, well, no one's stopping you from paying more. Go ahead and pay more. There's no law that says you can't pay people $15. But I also have seen statistics that show majority or a large portion of the people who make minimum wage are actually seniors in part-time jobs. Maybe they go to Walmart, something like that, and they work there, or they're teenagers who are not in permanent positions. And so you're costing them. No one wants to hire them, you know, and people don't understand that there's a market, and what your value on the market is determined by the value you bring. Is your job worth $15 an hour? If you're getting paid $15 an hour for a job that creates $12 in value for your employer is losing money. Therefore, you will not be hired. So you've just cost a job. Yep. And, you know, and then certainly when you look at China, all right, we're going to go over there and make it, you know?
Oh, exactly.
So guys, I spent a bit of time chatting. We actually did the interview a couple of weeks back because Alex was unavailable this week, but we wanted him locked in. He writes some amazing books. He's got some really cool characters, a lot of the espionage type novels. Jump on and check out Alex Shaw.
Okay then, right.
So right, guys,
Okay,
thanks for coming on. We've got Alex Shaw. Alex is an author, a multiple-time published author, British in background, and currently in Qatar. On what?
I am, yeah. I'm in. Yeah. What's all that about?
I just said for work or for pleasure.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, I mean, my wife's here because of her job. I can work wherever. So, you know, wherever I lay my laptop, that's my home. So, we're here because my wife's work, you know, she's got a job out here with a kind of quite a large company. So, yeah, we're here, and we're here for 3 years now.
Okay.
But, you know, we do go back. You know, we're not here all the time. I do kind of like to float around a bit, but obviously since this COVID stuff started, we have been here for a while. So.
Yeah.
You know,
and how are you coping with all the COVID stuff? So it's obviously not interrupting the writing. Is it creating any inspiration or anything?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I've got a book coming out in September, and the title is kind of still to be confirmed. At the moment, it's called Total Blackout, and it's about like an EMP attack on the US. And there's one reference to a virus in there, but it's something that happens in Russia like years ago. And as I was like going through it for the editor, I thought, should I keep this virus reference in there? And I'm thinking, well, I'm going to try and minimize it because, you know, at the beginning of the COVID thing, I think people are kind of interested in like reading more and more about viruses. But I think perhaps like in a year's time, couple of years' time, I think we're going to be kind of virused out, you know. So I want to kind of like, you know, not make that many references to the current situation in there. In terms of inspiration, I've got kind of, you know, time to write, but also, you know, I'm got the kids at home as well. And so when I'm not writing, I'm like helping them with their homework, trying to remember the schoolboy French, becoming a pancake chef. I made pancakes this morning.
I hope they're top quality, yeah?
Well, yeah, I think so. You know, I mean,
you'll have to forward through some photos or something of this, and we'll use that as promo material. What do you reckon?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I'll start to ship them out. I've got two types. I've got normal, and I've got you know, the ones with oats in, the oatmeal type, which I like. No one else seems to, but you know, it's kind of like, you know, portable porridge, I call it. You know.
Yeah, nice.
So
that sounds good. So your sort of most famous book series is the Cold Blood sort of.
That's it. Yeah.
That's the title you're probably best known for. How many countries you published in? How many books have you written on top of that, in and around that? And what's the premise of the stories?
Okay, well, the Aidan Snow character was basically based on me. If I'd been thinner and used to be in the SAS. I wasn't in the SAS, you know. So yeah, I mean, basically, Aidan Snow, he's a guy who was in the SAS. He got injured and invalided out. You know, physically, he's kind of, you know, recovered, but in the first bit, mentally, he still hadn't recovered quite. And as a kid, he was at the British Embassy in Moscow because his dad was a diplomat. And so he gets a job in Ukraine teaching at a school. He retrains to be a PE teacher. And so he's teaching at a school in Ukraine in the first book. And then suddenly he sees a guy who injured him 10 years before. And yet this guy's meant to be dead. And so suddenly it's like, hang on, how can this dead guy be here? And so he kind of gets kind of, how can we say this, kind of put back into the firing line. Suddenly there's these guys after him that aren't meant to exist anymore. And suddenly he's got to switch from being an expat teacher, you know, like teaching during the day, drinking at night, blah, blah, blah. Suddenly he's got to kind of, you know, go back to being a special forces soldier and try to kind of like clear his name and save people around him. So that's the kind of basis of the first one. And then as it goes on, second and third, he's, been seconded to MI6, or SIS is the proper name for it. And so, so he's kind of gone back into that field and kind of left teaching, But it was based in Ukraine, where I lived at the time. I lived there full time for a while, and it was based there. And so he's a character of mine. I've written 3 novels for that. I mean, they're a series, but I mean, they can be standalones as well. It's a matter which order you read them in. Although, I would say Cold Blood, Cold Black, Cold East. He also appears in another book I've written, which may be getting published late this year, early next year. I've got a couple of publishers interested in that one, including my own. And he's been in some novellas too, and short stories. So yeah, I mean, he's
obviously a recurring theme throughout your work. He's sort of your main core character through most of the things you do. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, he has been thus far. Yeah. I mean, he's kind of like he's a guy I kind of like to write about. I mean, it's like, Lee Child always writes about Jack Reacher,
Yeah.
But he's written like 22, 25 books and loads of short stories. And the thing is, with me, I do like the character of Aiden Snow, but also I think there are other things I want to kind of look at and kind of push, and to do that I need new characters. So I've got another character, a book that's coming out in September, a character called Jack Tate. Now, whilst he might sound similar to Aiden Snow, also be an ex-SAS, his experience is different. He's got a brother who's in MI6, and he goes to the States on holiday, and whilst he's there, he gets involved in the middle of this like terrorist plot, and so the whole story is basically him trying to stop this plot. So that book's out in September. As I said, it's called Total Blackout at the moment. It might change. And the sequel's out in April, which I'm trying to write at the moment. So, which you might be able to be in, I'm hoping for a recurring role or something. I mean, I'm pretty cool, and I save the world from terrorist attacks all the time. Well, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I mean, your Volivon bombs, I think, are probably world renowned. Yeah. Well and truly. It's pretty exciting. So, I mean, you're sort of saying different publishers. So you're not permanently signed to a publisher, or you sort of just ship your work to whoever's keenest at the time, or whatever suits you, or how does it work? I mean, what happens is when you sign with a publisher, you're going to get a book deal for X number of books. And then after that, they have first look at what you're writing, first refusal. So I basically wrote 2 books at the same time, and one of them, HarperCollins, said yes, we'll take that one. Okay. And it was the one I didn't think they'd want. So okay, fine, you'll take that one. But in the meantime, a couple of other publishers are interested in the other one. Now, it might make sense for them all to be at the same place, but it just depends, I mean, if I get a better deal elsewhere for the other book, it will go somewhere else. But, you tend to keep series at the same place, otherwise, it's confusing, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I imagine a publishing house like HarperCollins wouldn't want you to do an inaugural book and it'd go really well, and then down the track find the sequels land somewhere else. It'd be the equivalent.
Well, that's it.
People making Jaws or the Terminator franchise or whatever. I suppose it's about trying to keep it in-house where you can.
Well, that's it. Yeah. I mean, at the moment, Aiden Snow's all with HarperCollins, and Jack Tate's with HarperCollins. There's another character I mentioned briefly, French intelligence operative, female, Sophie Racine. She's got her own standalone series, which, as I said, that's the one I've got a couple of offers for. But Aiden Snow appears in that as a secondary character.
Yeah, okay.
So, fans of Aiden Snow, they can read that and he'll be in it. And for new readers, they can, especially female readers who seem to prefer a female, protagonist, that'll be one which hopefully they'll kind of get into. But, it's all early days. I mean, everything could happen in 6 months' time. But, it's exciting having several things on the go at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. So how long have you been a professional writer? How long have you been able to make a living out of your writing? There's plenty of creative artists out there that sort of just do it as a as a hobby, or they do it, you know, out of the love of the game? How long have you been able to pay your bills with it?
Well, funnily enough, when I very first started writing, I was self-published. And the odd thing was, because I was self-published, I started in 2008. And at the time, there were hardly any UK authors who were on Kindle who were self-published. And so I started in the US, then Kindle came to the UK, and suddenly, because there weren't many of us around, I was literally kind of in the charts of like the big kind of like, you know, like the UK thriller writers at the time. And so for about a year and a half, I was like, oh my God, my little book's paying the mortgage, you know. But as it's kind of gone on, it's kind of, yeah, exactly. But you know, like all good things, it didn't last. I mean, as things go on, you get more and more competition. And you know, I don't think if I was a self-published author now I could survive, because quite frankly, there's so much marketing you need. You know, you need to be a master of everything. I mean, I used to do all my stuff years ago, my covers and everything, but now you look at the quality that people are producing, and you know, it's gone up so much. So now I'm obviously happy to be a publisher. So yeah, I mean, I've been doing this since 2008. You know, you always want more sales, don't you? You always want to kind of sell more. Whatever business you do, you always want more. You know, you always want to make more money, or you know, be known for that.
Yeah, I mean, so artistic integrity is important, but you've still got to eat.
Well, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So,
I've been asked to do a couple of things.
What's your connection to the Ukraine and Russia? Is there a personal connection, or you just sort of decided Aidan Snow should have spent some time in there to build the character? Did you just sort of pull Russia out of a hat?
Well, I went to Ukraine in 1996. At the time, I was the youngest British expat there. I went there to start a language school, and I went over there, and within 3 months, I was headhunted to join the British Embassy school. Funnily enough, it was a school started by the British Embassy and the Argentinian Embassy. So obviously, I couldn't really mention the Falkland Islands much, because obviously, you know, we had different names for the Falkland Islands, you know, and
yeah.
So yeah, no, I went over there in '96, and on my very first day there, I met my wife. It was quite strange. I met her on my very first day. We got married 7 years later. You know, been together since 1996 now. So yeah, so that was in Ukraine. So I mean, from day one in Ukraine, I kind of felt like I fitted in. I mean, I've, you know, kind of got a Ukrainian family over there, and lots of Ukrainian friends, and many of the people that I knew in the 90s, lots of British expats especially, are still expats there now. I mean, I stayed until 2000. I came back to the UK. But yeah, so I mean, I've always kind of been interested in Ukraine, and you know, followed the political things that are going on there. You know, especially Russia's invasion, and you know, invasion of the East, and you know, the way they stole Crimea. So those are the kind of things I'm kind of, you know, those things kind of like, you know, get into my work and stuff, etc.
Personal relationship with the whole issue. So it makes sense for it to get in there. Yeah, look, that's really cool. Yeah. And the Ukraine's an area of the world that a lot of people don't really, I don't know, they don't give it a second thought. I mean, you know, it's sort of just, it's not a major country people think about or talk about a lot. So it's pretty interesting zone, interesting space.
Yeah. I mean, when I went there, I didn't have a TV for several years, and so I took lots of books to read. You know, this is before digital stuff, and I was reading all these spy books, and all of them kept mentioning the same places. You know, you'd have they'd mention Moscow, Paris, New York, London, and I thought, well, hang on, I'm in Ukraine, which is the after Russia, the second largest member of the former Soviet Union. And I'm in a city that was like the 7th largest in the Soviet Union, and nobody's mentioning it, you know. So I thought, okay, I'm not an expert on the SAS or spies, but now that I'm here, I'm an expert on Ukraine. So I thought, right, okay, I'll learn about the spy stuff, the espionage stuff, and I'll write about what I know. So I wrote about Ukraine and added the espionage slides and stuff, which is why, obviously, you know, my first character was teaching, because I was teaching. So, you know, it was kind of like getting it out there. I mean, the thing is, you know, yeah, you write about what you know. I mean, if I was painted by numbers now, I'd write a spy thriller based in like those locations, you know, because everyone knows New York, everyone knows Paris. Even if you've never been to these places, you know it, you know, seen it on TV, you know. You say Times Square, you don't need to describe it. Everyone knows what it looks like, you know. It's like Sydney Opera House, you know. You know, it looks like a weird...
everyone has the picture already in their head. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So does that mean does it mean you're an expert spy in your spare time as well? Could you perform some espionage if required, or so did you learn as much about that sort of stuff, or is that more not gimmicky, but as opposed to being factual? How accurate have you got into those details?
Well, I've got a friend who used to be an MI6 who I can consult with sometimes. It's fun enough. There was a guy I used to know who was a diplomat in the British Embassy, and back at the time, I just thought he was a cool guy. And it turns out 20 years later that he actually was the MI6 officer based at the embassy at the time, which is like, whoa, okay. And he's out of the service now, but he's giving me kind of advice, and I've asked him about questions. And I've got a couple of connections in Ukraine, the kind of services over there that I've kind of cultivated, or, family friends or family members, etc. So I know bits and pieces. I couldn't operate as a spy, obviously, too handsome, but
James Bond, 007.
That's it. I don't know. I'd say 008.5 because I'm 6'5", so I'm probably gonna be a
bit bigger than 007. Yeah, fair enough. I'd probably be. Yeah. I'm probably a bit shorter, but a little bit rounder.
Yeah. So it's funny because you watch films, or you read books, and when people get it wrong, things you've learned, you go, But at the same time, if somebody's reading my stuff and they see I've made a mistake, I'd love them to tell me about it, so I can kind of not make it again. For example, like the Glock handguns, they have no safety on them. You have to pull the trigger, and there's a couple of clicks. There's no safety switch. Yeah. And
so if you write a book talking about a safety on a Glock, you look a bit silly to those in the know. Yeah. It's
right. Yeah.
To get those details.
Get through. A couple of friends of mine who are big sellers have put safeties on their Glock, and we say, "Oh, hang on, doesn't exist." And these are books that have gone to print and stuff. So that's what you've got to be wary of. But at the same time, you get so many authors who put so much technical stuff into their stories. It's like, I don't need to know the speed of the bullet. I don't need to know what the bullet's made of. I don't need to know what kind of sight he's got. All I need to know is he can see in the dark with his sight, and he shot his gun. I don't need to know endless information.
Hopefully hit his target. Yeah.
Because otherwise you've got about 10 pages of talking about which gun it is. It's like, oh, you're trying to sell me this weapon or something, But there we are. I'd rather kind of let the characters speak for themselves than the locations.
So based on instead of people selling your guns, where do people buy your books? Obviously, you've got where are they going to get your hardcover, softcover, regular books? HarperCollins shops aren't as prevalent as they once were. You've obviously got a digital presence. Where should we be sending people to have a look at the series you write?
Right. Well, at the moment, obviously, worldwide book sales are down 80%, but that's if you look at print and digital. Digital is actually up 20%. So I'd say if your local bookshop, you can order my books at the local bookshop, the HarperCollins ones, by going look at the ISOBAR number. But I'd just say it's easier just to go online and get a Kindle version or a Kobo version, or whatever e-reader you've got. They're available on all the e-readers as well as in paperback.
Okay. So we're not sending them to a specific website for you or anything like that?
Well, to be honest, I'd say go to Amazon or Kobo. Try those.
Okay. Yeah. Look, no worries. Hopefully, people will pick up and have a read.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
So look, thanks for your time, Alex. Great to have you aboard.
Hey, thanks for having me.
No, very welcome. It's good. We're going to do try and get an author each week for the program. And it was really nice to sort of meet you and be able to slide it in. I think it's good, and I've always been a big reader, so it makes sense. So thanks for your time. Thanks for coming on, and hopefully we can stay in touch and do it again sometime shortly.
No, cool. That'd be nice. And thanks for having me on. And hello world, hello Australia. I hope you're all going to get through this thing, you know.
That's it. That's it. So stay safe, enjoy, and talk to you soon.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye then. Bye-bye. Bye.
How's that, mate? All right?
No, that was cool. Thanks.
So guys, my boy Dan Taxation Stephan Livera, 2020 elections in the United States. He's been on fire lately. We've got a little bit of my interview with him. We've got more coming up with him as well. He's just finished TIP Fest, or Taxation is Theft Fest, and he's doing some amazing work over there in the US. So take it away, Dan.
That's good.
What else you got?
Or interesting topic. How do you feel about, have you got any philosophies or any theories on the family law system? Obviously the American and the Australian one's different, but they're a big topic issue. Taxation, family law, things like that in my head are the key issues that affect most of society. How do you feel about family law relative to America, of course, and we'll just translate it over here. Do you have a stance?
Yeah, a lot of it needs to be reformed. There's we've got government incentivizing really bad systems. So we've got in some states, they incentivize the child protective services by how many children they take away from their families. So now basically, if I'm working for CPS, if I can take 10 children away from a family or from various families, I'm going to get a big bonus check. And it doesn't matter what the reason was to take them away. All that matters is that I take them away. That's an incentive. And so what we see because of that is we see absolutely obnoxious reasons for people to take their children away. One is coronavirus. We see people, you know, oh, you have a certain job, you're helping society, but you're putting yourself at risk for coronavirus. We're going to take your children away. Some parents smoke cannabis, or there's a rumor that they're smoking cannabis and not even any actual proof. They'll come and take the children away. Adults don't want to, they don't want their kids to go to a certain public school. And, you know, they say, hey, we don't agree with this. And you know, we have a public school system where we actually had one of my supporters is a teenager who's in high school. And they were imposing laws on him that did not exist. And when we confronted the school about it, they said, well, we make our own laws here. And, you know, even though we showed them a law that says they have absolutely no authority for it, they insisted that they had the right to create their own laws. So this mother wanted to take her son out of public school. And of course, that can create problems, and they can use that for a reason to take him away. There are so many different problems that are incentivized. When you get into the child support system, so you have a divorce. Of course, when there's a child, things get really difficult, and people want to fight over this. And you know, it's a tough situation. There's no easy solution to any of that. But the problem is when the government comes in and says, oh, well, you know, they say to the judge, if you separate these people and you force this person to pay, you know, $10,000 in child support over the next year, we're going to give your state an additional $10,000 for your budget. Now the judges are incentivized. Hey, we're going to impose as much child support, even if it's completely unreasonable, even if we know the father can't pay it, we're going to impose as much as we possibly can because we're going to get the money from the federal government. You know, there are all these programs in place, and all they do is they create this division. You actually have laws in place that incentivize divorce. You have subsidies for women who are divorced, who have kids. The more kids they have, there's a program, a welfare program, where women can receive money for every kid that they have, but not if the father lives in the home. So that's incentive for them to kick the father out. And you know, you take all their money away from child support, and they're looking for, okay, how can I make some more money? And some of them turn to you know, side hustles, selling drugs, whatever it might be, to get some more money. And of course, that ends up getting them in prison. And you know, it's just another problem that's created by government that has set, you know, this series of dominoes in place that are just absolutely destroying families. So you know, we absolutely do need some reform.
Yeah, for sure. It feeds into a negative cycle, clearly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so you touched on education, and since we're going all in, and we're gonna sort of tackle the big issues, how would you see the education system being reformed? in your way of doing it. I sort of have my own thoughts, but what are yours relative to a way to improve the quality of the education of our children? We worked out, I think last year they did a heap of testing on Australian kids, and we were about 4 years behind at primary school level than, say, Singapore's children, which I found appalling considering how much our government manages and tips into these programs. What are your thoughts on the American version of, and how would you tackle it, and how would you improve it?
Absolutely. So we have to understand that the reason our education system is so bad is because it's not designed to educate us. It was designed to make factory workers. And there's so many different arguments for this. One of the gentlemen that I'm running against, Arvin Vohra, is actually he's an educator, and he's got he's got so many things he could say about this. And that's the kind of person I'd like to put in charge of the education system. But of course, the Federal Department of Education needs to go, because this is trying to create a one-size-fits-all education program for the entire country. And not everybody thinks the same or works the same. So, you have programs like No Child Left Behind, which have basically made, instead of making the kids smarter, it has made the schools dumber to make sure that everybody passes. And, the reality is everybody's different. And it's, they try to divide people on these standardized tests and say these kids are smarter than these kids. And that might not even be the case. They might all be smart. It's just that they have different ways of learning, or they're interested in different things. I know when I was going through public school, I absolutely could not pay attention in my English literature classes, geography and history. I just was not interested in that. Science and math I did really well in, because that's what I was interested in. And that's of course why I became a computer nerd. But that's the thing. If you allow people to study what they're interested in, some people are really interested in medicine. Allow them to study medicine and chemistry and all these other things. And they might be really great at it, but just because they failed on English literature, whatever, because they were too bored to read the book, does not mean that you should fail them out of high school and not allow them to become a doctor. That's absolutely insane. So there's a lot of that. Competition is really important. And what I mean by that is we need to have different options. We need to have different options where you can say, okay, if my kid's not doing that well in this school, let's take them to a different school. Let's try homeschooling. And in fact, right now on this lockdown, everybody's essentially in homeschooling, and we're seeing that it actually does work. And a lot of parents are being forced to see, hey, if I stay home with my kids and I actually work with them and teach them, first of all, I'm actually going to know what they're learning, and I can have a little bit of control over that, because right now we send our kids to school, we don't know what they're learning. They come home, and it's not like they can repeat everything to us, and we don't know if they're being indoctrinated or brainwashed into praise the government, that kind of stuff, which is really what's going on.
Which I do suspect that does occur. Certainly it occurs over here in some capacity, and I suspect the same over there.
Absolutely. But to what degree? It's for a lot of people out here, it's like, yeah, we know it happens, but that's our only option. I know plenty of libertarians who send their kids to public school, and they try to re-educate their kids once they come home, but they're like, I can't do the homeschooling, I don't have the time. And of course, this is another government problem, because remember, back in 50 or 75 years ago, not everybody was in the workforce. There were a lot of stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home wives that's what society was made out of. And at some point they said, okay, and I think this was around World War II, they said, no, we need to improve our workforce. We need to get everybody into the factories, including the women. So it used to be that half of the country was unemployed, and now we're worried about, it's 5% unemployment. That's unacceptable. It's not about letting people stay at home and living their free lives. It's about getting people into factories. And that's why, you look at the school system. I don't know how it is out there, but in the US, it's you go to school, you hear the bell, and when the bell rings, you get to class. And then when the bell rings, you get to leave to class and you get to go have lunch. That's exactly how a factory works. You hear the bell, you hear the whistle, whatever it is, start work, stop work, start work, stop work. And that's really what it is. It's absolutely insane. But that system was designed, and you go back to who actually put that in place, and it was the Rockefellers who came up with the Federal Department of Education, and they had so many factories. That's what this was. This was a byproduct of the Industrial Revolution. It's absolutely obsolete. It's not there to make us smart. It's there to turn us into employees. And it doesn't teach us anything about survival. It doesn't teach us how to do our taxes. It doesn't teach us how to buy a house. It teaches us how to be good employees. And that's it.
How does the banking system work? How does interest on a credit card work? How's afterpay work?
None of that.
How do you cook, clean, take care of yourself? You know, like, it's amazing the stuff that
those are some of the classes. Those are some of the I guess when I was growing up, they were already starting to phase those classes out. How to repair your own car, how to you know, the home economics, how to cook, and all this other stuff. They started getting rid of those when I was in high school. And why? These are survival skills.
The life skills. Yeah, that's right. One of the other things I noticed, certainly over here with our primary school. So when I went to primary school an eternity ago, the fencing around the schools, and I just noticed it because that's just one of the things I noticed, was I could, as a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old, I could climb over the fence quite conceivably to get a ball or whatever we were doing as kids, and that was from the school. I drove past my old primary school the other day, and it looks like a prison. And it used to be a beautiful school, but now the fences are massively tall, and I don't know what the schools are like over there. I know a lot of the schools over here have become that way, and the argument is, oh well, it's to keep the children safe. To keep them in their safe zone. No, it's to keep them in a cage. I don't know if you're preparing them for jail or you're just teaching them that it's okay to be locked into an environment, but that seems to be my take on it anyway. And I sort of think, you're just indoctrinating children to be good little battery chickens or, caged chickens.
Yeah. And whether or not the cage actually has that effect is it could be, because there are so many things that the government does with good intentions that are absolutely just destructive to our lives. So they might say, oh yeah, these kids are jumping the fence to get the ball. We need to figure out a way to keep them in. So they build a bigger cage, instead of saying, maybe we don't have enough adults to supervise these children, which is like, it's like what, 30 to 1, or when they're on the playground, it's probably more like 100 or 200 to 1. And it's like, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't be sending our kids to these schools where they don't. We should keep them at home and educate them ourselves, one-on-one, or it might be 2-on-1, or two adults to 5 children, whatever it is. That's how people should be educated, because when you're in school, first of all, you have this emotional bonding connection with your parents and with your teachers, right? And if you're, if the time your kids turn 3 or 4 years old and you send them off to public school, they've only spent a few years bonding with you, and now they're going to spend over a decade bonding with like all these total strangers who are going to teach them all this information about life and what they're supposed to do with their life. And it disconnects them from their parents and from the families. And I think there's a lot of, it might be absolutely well-intentioned, or the intention was just to create factory workers to improve the lives of families by having, better employment. That might, a noble cause, but all of these side effects that it's creating, we have to recognize, hey, these are not good. How far back on this can we go? How many of these can we fix and go back to the original way? Because that's so much better.
Yeah. No, I've sort of always thought that every reaction has an equal and opposite reaction, is the old saying. I guess the next portion of the education system is I've done a little bit of homework on Milton Friedman, the famous libertarian economist. Now he advocated for a voucher style system, which allowed, for example, one school to go, well, we've got some great home economics and metalwork and car shop teachers here. Maybe we should focus schools on different vocations a little bit more, as opposed to just generalized indoctrination centers. Do you see any value in that concept in modern times? Obviously, he came out with that quite a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good start. Of course, ideally, it's not that great, because you're still forcing people to pay into a system. And if you happen to have a child, then you get some of that money back and you can take it and use it for their education. We shouldn't be paying for education that we're not using. If people are concerned that, like, okay, if we don't have government pay for education, we're going to have a lot of people who they're not going to take their kids to school. They're going to be uneducated. They're going to be stupid. They're going to be a problem for society. That's not necessarily true. But when you consider all of the money that the people are going to save, everyone will be able to afford the school. Plus, the government spends like somewhere between $30,000 and $60,000 per year on each student. That's a lot of money. And if you consider that the cost of education is really a fraction of that, when you consider that you can homeschool your kids with a better program than a public school for, you know, just a few $100s a year, and you consider if you get rid of the school taxes that are in your property tax, you'd save thousands of dollars per year and replace it with just a couple hundred. I think we'd really be doing a lot better. And a lot of this comes from technology. When I talk about the expense of just a couple $100s, there are online education courses that are great for you know, everyone from a 3-year-old up to college. You can really do this online, which is really great because, you know, you used to have to buy books before. And now you can get a tablet and you can just download so much information without having to have, you know, print all this paper and create all these expensive books, which those books, by the way, are overpriced because of contracts that they have with the government and basically a monopoly that's in place where every single book that, you know, you go to the bookstore and buy a book like that might cost you $30. The schools might be paying $100 to $200 per book. And especially when you get to college, it's the same kind of thing, except you're paying for it more directly. The cost of education is really, really, really inexpensive. We just think it's expensive because we look at how much money the government is spending on it, and they're just burning through it.
Get the fat lesbians. Get them. Jimmy. Go on. What are you doing? Do it. What are you doing? Give them the face. I like it. You're going to be famous tomorrow.
Okay guys, this is our segment with Stephen Wells, our doctor of wrong think, and he's even had a book of his banned off Amazon, so it's definitely...
I think it's not fantastic, but it does prove our usual point about the censorship and bullshit that goes on.
It does.
Let's get into the Stephen Wells interview.
Check it out. There we go, and we're done.
And we're done?
Good boy, you pull away.
Let's do it once again. We've got the indomitable Stephen Wells. How's that for words? Do you like that one?
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. It's very good.
Mate, you're our regular contributor and author. We love having you here. And we announced last week the excitement of you having a book published. And it's a Mickey Mouse place to start. You know, throughout history, the powers that be have often burned books and banned books and tried to stop people from reading, learning, getting opinions they may or may not like. The great COVID swindle, mate, banned by Amazon and a few other publishers. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I'm very disappointed. I'd uploaded it. I'd spent, God knows how much time getting it all edited to their standards and formatting and everything else. And yeah, I was just waiting for it to be approved and go on sale. And then I get an email back. I've got 2 emails back. I've got first an email back about the cover, saying that they couldn't publish it as long as it had that cover because they're following World Health Organization guidelines. And then yesterday or the day before yesterday, I got another email back saying that the content was unacceptable and they wouldn't be publishing even if I changed the cover. So and then basically anybody who is affiliated with Amazon in any way, anybody who you know, has their own publishing company, digital publishing company, which also then on-sells to Amazon, yeah, they've all got back to me as well and said that whatever Amazon standards are, they will be following them. And so I've got a couple more places to try later on today to see if I can get it online. It will only be digital now online. So Amazon offered digital and then print to order. So people who wanted a real book could, I didn't have to, like, you know, spend tons of money printing them up. People could print to order, which was very good for overseas because you know, it costs like $12 to send a book overseas from my end. But yeah. What can you do? You can buy Mein Kampf by Adolf Hitler on Amazon, but you can't buy my book. Apparently my book is too dangerous for you.
I almost see that as a compliment, to be fair. This is how badly they want to shut down what you're trying to do. That you're less or more offensive than a book as controversial as Mein Kampf. It's fucking unbelievable that they can come out with this. You know, like really.
I mean, the thing about it as well. I mean, it's not like I'm J.K. Rowling or Salman Rushdie. You know, it's not like I had. I'm a multi-millionaire from my book sales. You know, I sold a few hundred copies of my first book because I wasn't particularly out there to change the world. I just wanted to get my thoughts out there, and if I made a few extra dollars out of it and got to a few extra people, it was great. But yeah, apparently a nobody like myself is more dangerous than Adolf Hitler these days. So what can you do?
Oh man, that's fantastic. To me, that's a win. You know, like I'm so over the shit that goes on with in and around all this stuff, and people are getting blocked and cut off all over the place. As you know, Dia, one of our producers, who causes her own controversy for God only knows what reason. You know, she had a fairly controversial anti-vaxxer, for lack of a better term, on her channel the other night, and I just don't understand why are we banning people? Have a discussion with them, see what their opinions are, and let people think about it and come up with their own conclusions.
That was a great interview by Dia, by the way. Like I said on your show as well, that she did a fantastic job of making a very controversial character feel relaxed enough to open up and just explain things as if she was talking to one of her family. It was great.
Mate, she started tackling some really, really tough topics. She started navigating away from the just politics stuff and going more into actual issues. And I think she's doing an amazing job, to be perfectly honest. I'll take all the credit because I've obviously encouraged her to stay away from the stupid and move more into the high quality guests. But all bullshit aside, she's doing a really good job, and I think she tackles those difficult topics with a nice personality vibe. If you or I did it, it'd probably come across a bit more abrasive than her doing it. But maybe,
yeah, well, I can't flirt as well as her.
We don't have the big eyes, mate. The big eyes.
Okay.
There's a few other qualities, but we don't have them. But mate, based on the fact that your book has been banned for discussing COVID, apparently, and I know you know all about this, our autistic expert 16-year-old. Now, I don't want to take the piss out of her autism based on autism, but the fact that this is who is now apparently a COVID expert as well as a climate change expert at the age of 16. 17 now. She must have had a birthday. My apologies. The fact that she's a world expert, outranking people such as Dr. Rand Paul, who put his hand up for this job as well, to my understanding. Mate, if she's qualified to be an expert on this and you're not, with all your work and research, what do you reckon? What do you? How does any of this add up?
I think it's just really, really funny that that they can invite, that CNN can have a panel of experts on the coronavirus and include Greta Thunberg. It was funny enough when she was talking about climate change, but now that she's suddenly a health expert as well.
Well, maybe you're just copying her. Have you ever thought that perhaps you should stop trying to be more and more like her and stop? You followed her into climate change, you followed her into COVID. You just want to be like Greta.
Well, that's it. I mean, I'm jealous. What can I say? I do it all out of envy. I never research anything because I want to follow her example. No, it's just very, very funny. I mean, there are a lot of great doctors out there who see. I wouldn't call myself an expert on climate change. I wouldn't call myself an expert on COVID either. I'm no more than a reporter, really, just an investigative journalist who's looked into what the claims are and then found contradictions and just followed those contradictions to their logical conclusions. I've had to learn a fair bit about climate science along the way. I've had to brush up on my physics and really start going through some mathematics that I hadn't touched in over 30 years along the way. But if they were inviting me to be an expert, I would decline. I would get my friend Joseph Postma to be the expert. I might go on there as a commentator, but not as an expert.
Yeah, a well-read individual who sort of has spent a lot of time looking at a subject. I've just opened the can of worms of the Murray-Darling Basin for this.
Well, that's another. That's.
All right.
You can go down the rabbit hole on that one as well, can't you? So.
Well, I rang a couple of more learned friends than myself, which, funnily enough, is what I do for this show. I just contact people who are a bit more up on topics than I am and discuss things with them. It's a great way for me to learn stuff. But I started the phone discussion out thinking it was going to be, a half-hour tutorial on, X, Y, and Z, thinking that we were starting somewhere in the, 60s and 70s of Australia. This is where the problem sort of really kicked in. We started in the 1800s with our discussion, and 4 hours later we were still talking. It was an amazing conversation. There was so much to get my poor little brain around, but it's the same thing. He's a self-appointed, not a self-appointed expert, but a self-taught expert such as yourself. You're not an expert per se, but you've studied your ass off to get really good at it. So
yeah, I mean, sorry, the feedback's getting a bit. Let me just move this computer a bit and see if we get the microphone not quite in front of my face. Here we go. Yeah, I mean, I pride myself on taking the things that the experts say and looking at all the scientific papers and try and put it into layman's language. That's where I find my niche. So, my own climate change book, there are much more technical and detailed ones out there, but there are also lots of people who just would never read such books because they're not accessible to the vast majority of people who aren't used to reading scientific papers. So that's why I decided to do what I did. I just found a niche in the market where I thought the scientists were doing a great job of explaining to other scientists and nerdy people like myself, but trying to gather information across in a manner that was other people could understand. That seemed to be lacking. It was doing everybody on the other side. The Greta Thunbergs and the Al Gores were doing a great job of dumbing everything down on their side of the argument. But we seem to have been combating it on the other side of the argument with just reams and reams of technical stuff, which everybody just goes glassy-eyed over. So,
yeah, and look, and I find that with the libertarian movement and all this. I actually want to relabel it all because, as far as I'm concerned, right-wing, left-wing politics died with COVID. I'm finding an awful lot of people who I probably would have and probably still do disagree with a lot on. They're starting to wake up to the whole overreach and the control and the whatever. And I'm still like, in the areas where I disagree with you, I generally say, but you do you. This is where the government's saying, we don't care what you want to do. We're going to tell you what you're going to do. And other people are starting to wake up. So I think the left-right's starting to divide a bit, or the narrative's falling apart, which is sort of a win in many ways. But the left used to control the narrative of climate change really heavily. And they were...
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to speak softly so I don't get my microphone all agitated. Okay. Yeah, I mean, Michael Moore, very prominent, hard, radical left-wing guy. He's just been disowned by his own side because he's just produced Planet of the Humans, a new documentary by Jeff Gibbs is the director, another lifelong environmentalist, And they've started. They had a look into the renewable energy industry, and what they've come across is what people on the right have known for decades, is that there's nothing environmentally friendly about it at all. In fact, the exact opposite. And all of the fossil fuel companies and all of the big banks and all of the big rich money people who the left have always railed against, they've exposed the fact that it is these same people who they've been saying are destroying the planet who have been backing renewable energy to the nth degree. And in typical left-wing fashion, they've killed the messenger rather than so it's but I think the tide is, there's going to get a point where the grassroots left who work very much on a basis of emotion and passion, whereas the right would probably work more on a basis of sort of logic and information. To get a functioning society, you need both to work in harmony. And the left, grassroots left, they seem to be waking up to the fact that they've been had. That basically all of the corporate government corruption that they've been railing against the fossil fuel industry for years and years and years, and all of the pollution that they've been saying is that they need to get rid of. They're now realizing that that all of these powerful interests that they hate, they got one over them. They infiltrated their organizations. They bribed the top officials. They got people to the top, and then they started pushing the line that the way to make things more sustainable was by going down, solar, wind, biofuels. And the exact opposite was the case. We are ending up using a lot more fossil fuels than we ever would before, because and the movie does a great job of that, because it points out, for example, people say, silicon, it's just sand, for making the solar panels, but it's not. It's high quality silicon, which is made by melting quartz and high quality coal together. Okay. So it's literally coal and coal mining and quartz mining, then followed by melting it all together just to get the silicon bit, and then it just goes on with it. It does a great job. The only thing that anybody on sort of my side of politics would take issue with is they still keep the Malthusian idea alive that the only way to save us all is by reducing the population down to next to nothing and killing us all. So they haven't lost that sort of thing, but they've woken up to the fact that that technology, that renewable technology, isn't the answer. It's actually the problem. No, there's a big argument for that. Obviously, my political leanings put me square in the zone where I think if we're going to be legitimate about environmentally better off technology, I've always put forward, I've got no problem with green energy as long as it's green and it's sustainable, legitimately sustainable, not bullshit sustainable. And I think there's a big argument for we need to be looking at nuclear. And that's a huge topic. I know that we could talk energy policy for days and days, and we might do that down the track. But I think if the left, and it's usually the left that do the panicky scream about the environment, if they're fair dinkum, they've got to look into nuclear. They have no choice. It's the most practical one of the lot. And then the other side is, of course, your renewables have to be renewable, not fake renewable. The electric cars that are full of, what's the chemical they use in the electric cars? You'd be right on it, I'm sure. Lithium.
Lithium.
Yeah. So for the batteries, so lithium batteries, just a whole range of toxic crap and real problems in processing and mining. I mean, you're in a it doesn't really matter what the battery is. You're in a world of you're in clown world when they start talking about batteries being environmentally friendly. I mean, You know, you try and put just your regular you know, AA battery in the bin and see what happens to you. You know, you know, the council aren't going to be very, very happy with you if you just dispose of your batteries. But now we're in this situation where every, you know, 5, 10, 15 years, you're going to be replacing your car battery, and that's got to go somewhere. And that's toxic as hell, and you've got to deal with that sort of stuff. So the main thing that people who do care about the environment really sort of need to grasp hold of is the fact that taking away subsidies for any particular technology and making regulation fairly standard across all technologies is the only way that you will find what's the most environmentally friendly. And what will be the most environmentally friendly is, believe it or not, is price. Price, you know, because what price reflects is the amount of manpower that went into making it, the amount of energy that was used to get there, the amount of capital that was used to get it there. So something that is cheap generally has a lower footprint of human activity around it than something that's horribly expensive, unless what's making it horribly expensive is just the tons and tons of regulation that you've got to get through. Because that, again, the regulation, it's not just paperwork. It's the fact that somebody has to be paid to take your paperwork, go over your paperwork, write back about your paperwork. It's all the bureaucrats who get paid. You know, that's what adds the cost. So, you know, just trying to get things on an even keel with all of the energy would be the main thing that people should be looking at if they want a world which is, you know, has less pollution and is more efficient and whatever. But, you know, the whole, you know, the guys from the Michael Moore film, what they still haven't realized yet is that you can't just get rid of technology. You know, we can't just go back to the 17th century and pretend the Industrial Revolution never happened. So yeah, you've got to take the rough with the smooth. You've got to realize that there are trade-offs, that there's always going to be some pollution, and all we can do really is make things more efficient, and we'll minimize it over time. But yeah, that's the logical argument. I've got to find an emotional argument to get it across to them with.
Man, that's what I've always said about the Libertarians. We're pretty good up here at getting the head side of it across. We struggle to get the emotional side across, and that's where if we can get that right, the logic and the emotion at the same time, that's when you'll get unity across the board, I think. And that right around that time, our governments will shit themselves, and it'll be all happening from there on in, mate.
Yeah, well, I think the time is coming. The mob is about to turn, as far as I can see. We had all of last year, all of these Extinction Rebellion protests, where they're all, you know, willing to glue themselves to aeroplanes and stuff. God help the powers that be if those people ever wake up to the fact that they've been conned. Because I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of real emotion, because there's one thing thinking about, you know, I've been doing this to save the planet. It's another thing entirely when someone finds out that they've been lied to systematically and that their whole life has been based on a lie. That you know, for people who are emotional anyway, yeah, I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of that.
Funnily enough, that's always been my biggest concern about Greta Thunberg is, for a kid like that, what happens when she's 50 and the world hasn't ended? You know what I mean? Like her entire identity is built around this. Everything is going to collapse. There is going to be an environmental crisis. We are all going to die. How many years is she going to go before it all happens? When it doesn't happen, and everybody goes, "Where's that climate crisis, Dole?" And you know what I mean? Like, she's just a little girl, and she's just the weight of this world on her shoulders. That you're all going to end up dead based on. If it doesn't happen, you know what I mean? Like, you sort of go, well, what would happen to, you know, I don't know if you've got daughters or what, but that's an awful lot of pressure for a kid. She's a child. You know?
So?
Well, she's not a child.
My sympathy for Greta is it just doesn't exist anymore. I think she's old enough. I think she's going to be rich enough. I think she's already like a multi-millionaire from what she's done. I think she will find a way to keep selling the message, just like Al Gore has repeatedly, come back again and every 10 years and just says the same thing.
Yeah. Oh,
but it doesn't. We'll
like
see Greta when she's 26. We'll see Greta when she's 36. And when she's 96, she'll be saying the same thing she was when she was 16. We only have 10 years left to go.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there is that side of it, of course, mate. I just look at it and I just go, you poor kid, you've been brainwashed to the point beyond where you're beyond help, really, and your entire identity is attached to this crisis that I'm questionable whether it's going to happen,
Yeah, well, so when she's 96, she's like, "You've stolen my pension! How dare you!"
There'll still be memes going around, the poor kid. But anyway, mate, always good to have you on. Thank you for your time, as always. We've got a live stream. We're trying to confirm times at the moment. I don't know. We need to come up with a name for it. We got three of the a tri-state rebellion or something. We'll have to call it, or I don't know. We'll think of something catchy. But that should actually go to air before we do this show, so there's no point worrying about promoting it in this video. But yeah, look, I'll let you know the details and we'll have a good time with it.
Sounds good. Talk to you next time.
Thanks, mate. See ya.
See ya.
Have a go at the cheesy grin on this one, guys. We're just about to kick off with Stephan Livera. Stephan Livera is our Bitcoin guru. Have you bought any Bitcoin yet, there?
I don't, but I probably think I should before it becomes illegal.
Isn't that terrifying? What a load of monkey crap from our government. What a shock. I'm not surprised. But here we go, guys. Here's Stephan Livera.
Good, mate. Okay, guys, Bitcoin for Idiots number 7. We got the amazing Stephan Livera, my Mr. Miyagi of Bitcoin. We've had an interesting, Bitcoin's been pretty epic this week. There's been all sorts of stuff going. I've still got my auntie peppering me with questions about Bitcoin. She keeps getting a lot of emails talking about earning $1 million on Bitcoin for 50 cents, which she now finds funny. She watched your episode the other week talking about the scams, and that sort of made a bit of sense to her. But one of the things that did pop up this week, because as she's sort of really kind of finding the whole thing very interesting, was this article that I sent you directly regarding an Australian woman being charged by New South Wales police, state police state, same thing these days, for unlawfully exchanging millions of dollars worth of cryptocurrency, including Bitcoin. Obviously, I sent that through to you, and I had a bit of a chuckle about it because in my natural libertarian brain, I went, these guys are getting really upset. Their monetary system is a disaster and it's failing rapidly. People are thinking outside the box and not necessarily colouring in the codes our governments approve of. What was your take on it, mate? You're more of an expert. I just look at it from the rebel standpoint, going, buggy you. Why are you harassing this poor woman?
Right, and look, I think the promise of Bitcoin is a world where you don't get financially censored like that. Now, the difficulty is where there's that kind of the gateway from the fiat AUD side or US dollar side over into Bitcoin. And so basically the main kind of legislations and regulations that the government puts here are things like AML, anti-money laundering, right? And that places all these requirements known as KYC, know your customer. And some other ones are things like sanctions laws and things like that. So basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to say anyone who is carrying on a business of exchanging back and forward Bitcoin and fiat money must do all the KYC, and basically it's their regulatory hammer that they just drop on anyone who wants to try and allow people to enter or exit that Bitcoin fiat world, right? So it's because if you're wholly within the Bitcoin world, there's no real, like, they can't really stop that. But where people are doing Australian dollar for Bitcoin and they're carrying it on as a business, right? And notice there's a difference between if there's there's probably going to be a bit of a difference. It'll be regarded as a bit of a difference where if it's kind of more like seen like a hobby thing, whereas like if you're doing it seen as like this is your business, then that sort of raises the bar, if you will. So that's basically why it seems to me like the government is trying to clamp down and crack down on these kinds of examples, and they're trying to make an example here, right? So probably what's happened is this lady has probably deposited a lot of money through her bank account. That has probably raised up some flags, and then the bank has is running monitoring systems, and then has probably shared that with the police, AFP or AUSTRAC, for example, which is the AML regulator. And then they probably then go and investigate further, and then they decide, okay, yeah, let's try and clamp down, and we'll smash this person. We'll get a warrant. We'll investigate and raid their house, and then figure out, oh, look, you've done all these Bitcoin trades for Australian dollars or whatever. And that's probably what's happened in this case. Now, it's worthwhile noting that if anyone's concerned, right, if that is your concern, you can, of course, go to the KYC exchanges, right? And they will do all the full KYC. They'll do all that stuff. So it is fully legal if you use that method. It's just obviously that is not as government resistant, if you will. And that's not as, longer term resistant, because technically there is that risk that, let's say, the government seizes the records from those exchanges and says, I want to know who has Bitcoin. Now, in my view, I think longer term, I think everyone will just have Bitcoin. So it'll just get to a point where having Bitcoin is kind of like it's not going to be like, oh, he's a known Bitcoin user. It'll be like saying he's a known internet user, right? Like everyone uses the internet, right? So I think it'll eventually get to that point. Now, there may be some kind of initial social resistance, right? And so sometimes with new innovations, that can happen, right? It's like when people were talking about like, trains, they might have said, oh, look, you're going to make the horses abort their foals if you use these trains instead of horses or whatever. Like there's always going to be a bit of initial resistance, a little bit of a societal pushback, and some time that it takes for people to change over into that new mindset. So essentially, I would say if you are a listener and you're thinking, oh, I don't want like that risk of the government kind of seizing all my Bitcoins. Well, there are other ways to acquire Bitcoins. I mean, for small value trades that people are doing just for cash, like realistically, no one's really going to care or stop you.
I don't know, mate. I heard a New South Wales government guy here for a $6 jar of honey this morning. These guys are getting pretty paranoid about what humans are doing unauthorized.
Yeah, right. And I mean, yeah, absolutely. On the the political front, I think there is more that can be done to push back against the injustice, I think, of these AML laws. But the thing is, every player in this has their own little piece of the pie, and they've got their own little castle to protect. So, for example, if you work for AUSTRAC or you work for some of these different agencies and so on, their job only exists because of AML laws, right? Of course. They will play up and say, oh, look, see, you need these laws to stop the drug dealers, the drug lords and the terrorists and the whatever, right? Whatever is the boogeyman of the day, they will play that up and say, no, we need AML laws and sanctions laws to stop these naughty people. And that's why everyone
falls into falls into the cash ban stuff. A bloke close to where I live the other day, I don't know the guy at all or the full story of it, but apparently he was found with $90,000 in a handgun after crashing his car. Now, he was instantly charged with proceeds of crime, and I sort of thought, well, what crime has been committed? I don't know whether the gun was registered. I don't know anything along those lines. I'm not quite sure about what the media's like. He had a gun. Boo-hoo. So's all the coppers, and so do many farmers, and just about every American, best I can tell. With this article, though, and the bit that really sort of got my attention, which when I read it, I sort of it made the hair stand up on the back of my neck, was the chief of the cybercrime squad, Detective Superintendent Matt Kraft, said it was the first arrest by the team relating to non-compliant digital currency providers in the state of New South Wales, and may be the first of its kind in Australia. This will be the first of many arrests I believe we will make over the coming years, and you're all being put on notice, Craft said, presumably addressing others conducting unlawful cryptocurrency sales. And I thought, mind your damn business to start with. If I want to give you an apple and you have 2 oranges and you're happy enough to trade me 2 oranges for my apple, I don't see a problem with any of this. This has absolutely nothing to do with these parasites, and it sort of made my head explode. But it also made me want to promote Bitcoin even harder because, to be fair, up their ass. Now, you're far more tuned in with the monetary system. I'm learning it as I go and all that sort of thing. What I do see at the moment is a lot of talk about, there was one economist talking the other day that every Australian should be given $100,000 from the government to pay down personal debt, had to go towards debt. So, you know, your bank loans, your mortgages, your credit cards, whatever. And that would mitigate some of the damage that's going to be done from all this financial fallout with COVID. And then I saw another guy who his whole argument was, you know, the universal basic income, and that'll save everybody from a recession or a depression. My gut tells me we're going to have a depression regardless. You can only, you know, in chef terms, you can only cover a turd in so many different decorations. It's still going to be a turd, and that's where our financial system seems to be. I can take it, I can present it, I can bake it, I can do whatever with a turd, but if it's shit, it's still shit. And that seems to be our monetary system at the moment. So for me to look at Bitcoin, I'm looking at Bitcoin going, what a great alternative. And no, we don't need to respond to the government with this. They've already failed in their version of a monetary system, in my eyes. They've been failing for a long time. The reserve banking system, which if you don't know about that, do some homework. Stephan might want to touch on it in a second. But the whole thing seems a fraudulent way to keep people tuned into something. Like, what are your thoughts? You know, is 100 grand going to save everybody, or should everybody just be allowed to do Bitcoin if you want to do Bitcoin or whatever else?
Of course. I mean, I think it's a really, so this gets into this whole argument around, should they do universal basic income? Should they do stimulus? Like, obviously from the principled libertarian standpoint, you would say no, like, welfare statism is bad. It creates dependency. It can create a lot of, and this kind of policy can create a lot of inflation. Now, there's kind of, it's a nuanced position here, because at the same time, we also understand that really one thing that the government is doing right now is doing a lot of policies that help bail out financial institutions and not bail out the little guy. So it's kind of like, I mean, theoretically, the government should just not have a central bank, not have legal tender laws, and let people use whatever they want. Now, in practice, what I think is going to happen is they're just going to continue ramping up the welfare, and they're going to, it's sort of this ratchet effect, right? Because they start doing a bit more welfare and it's hard to bring it back down. And that may be one of the lasting impacts of much of the, you know, this job seeker, job keeper, and some of these other programs. Anyway, I think fundamentally, we know that if you leave too much of your value in the Australian dollar or in fiat money, it will go down over time, right? Your purchasing power, you are losing purchasing power over time. Just, that's not a controversial statement. You will just lose money over time. On the other hand, if you hold Bitcoin, which is a known harder asset, right? It is harder to seize, it's harder to inflate. It's known, the schedule, the actual inflation rate is much, much lower than everything else. Then you're going to win out longer term. And so that is the view of many Bitcoin people, is that we want to try and opt out because, you know, voice isn't really working, right? Think of it like voice and exit, right? So voice, you can talk about it. The government's not going to do much about it. They're just going to keep doing it because there's too many people who are sucking off the public teat, so to speak, to actually make the government smaller. And so that's why the Bitcoin idea is really, let's just exit. Let's just create our own little financial system that is less susceptible to the problems of government money and all this inflation. And so over time, when people set up their auto buying programs to just buy a little bit of Bitcoin every week, and for some people, they want to transact within the Bitcoin economy, they're taking part, they're earning Bitcoin and they're spending Bitcoin. And for other people, they're just earning fiat and they're just buying Bitcoin. And so that's essentially one way to view Bitcoin. And I think we also have to look back historically as well, right? So this is a point that your listeners, if they're interested, I recommend picking up this book, The Bitcoin Standard. It's by my friend Stephan Livera. He's been on my show a couple times, 3 or 4 times.
If you send me the link, I'll get Claudia to whack it in the description as well, and we can put it on the Resolute Facebook page and whatever. We're nearly at 100 subscribers, which is, for a little couple of week program. Hopefully we'll grow that up and whatever, and if they follow the links and all that sort of stuff. The other thing too with that, on the note of the book, Stephan, is we're about to add a little book club type program, a little 20-minute segment with an author. I've had a bit of an influx of authors over the last couple of weeks all contact me going, this author said you were great to deal with. What a cool little program. So if you've got some Bitcoin authors that would love to, jump on and do something similar to what you and I do, just talk about their book. I've done this book, we'll put it into the book club that I set up and see what happens, I'm happy to promote the shit out of Bitcoin. One, it pisses the government off, which anybody who knows me and my current political platform, it's all about pissing them off because they are parasites. And two, it's good if the average citizen can benefit from it. I'm all for it. If the individual's going to go well off Bitcoin, let's do heaps of it. And stiff shit for the government, to be perfectly honest with you. They're fat cats living off everybody else's risk and investment, and they do bugger all.
Exactly. Bitcoin is money for the people, and it is a way for people to stop the government basically continually inflating their money away. The current system is unjust. The reason being, there's these capital gains tax laws. You might have bought a property or some stocks or whatever, and say you bought it at like $100,000. And then a few years later, the price of that has risen to maybe $200,000. But in real terms, it's not $200,000 like from those days. But when you sell, you're getting assessed on a $100,000 capital gain. This is like a stealth wealth tax. Basically, the government is using this to try and raid the accumulated wealth of the population, right? So you as an entrepreneur, you as an employee, you work your ass off to build your business or to do your job, earn your money, and the government just swoops in and just kind of takes all this additional money and for what benefit? Like they're paying to surveil and spy on everyone. They're destroying the economy. They are doing all these terrible things. Ultimately, people need a way to opt out. And the really cool thing with Bitcoin is it is fundamentally a harder money. So historically, there are some examples where if you were not using hard money, you were the one who got screwed over. So quick examples, there was this island of Yap, and they were using this kind of rocks, and it was kind of like a social community thing where they knew who owned what rock, and you sort of did work for someone and they transferred the rock, right? But then what happened is like the settlers come in and they've got dynamite, and they're like, oh, hey, these guys are just using rocks for their money. We'll go around to the other side of the island, blast and create our own rocks. And then boom, they printed, money.
Their own money, yeah.
And then what did they do? Well, they took their wealth at pennies on the dollar. Similar story happened in Africa as well. So there were glass beads being used as money. And then the European settlers turn up and they're like, wait a minute, we've got glass blowing technology back home. We'll just go back home, make some glass, bring it here, and then again, buy all their wealth at pennies on the dollar. So the lesson is you want to make sure you are using the harder money, because over time, the harder, more scarce money wins out. And that essentially is kind of in a nutshell the case for Bitcoin as the hard money, because it has been cryptographically made scarce. There's an algorithm that restricts the new supply. And so that is in essence, that's the case. One of the cases for Bitcoin is that you can spend it in a way that, there's no government stopping you, and you can store your wealth. You can accumulate your wealth into this and not get raided and not have it stolen from like the government does with basically other assets.
Anything they can, yeah. It's like locusts. Watching locusts. If you've ever seen locusts or any other parasitical insect, that's pretty well our government. All 3 layers, to be fair. Very heartbreaking, Stephan, very heartbreaking. But I'll tell you, mate, I'd love to have an opportunity at some point where you and I sit down maybe for an hour or something and just get right into the nitty-gritty of the whole financial markets. You seem to have a great grip on it. I have a natural aversion to the whole thing. So we might have to organise a day where we can do that. I reckon that'd be a spot-on little series or episode or just a video,
sure.
But yeah, we'll organise that soon. But mate, for this week, let's we'll wind up here because we're at about 17 minutes, which you can only get so much into an hour and a half program. I look forward to talking to you next week, and yeah, let's start tackling the whole problem of money in and of itself, because one without the other doesn't work. You know what I mean? Or it's an excellent contrast, I think. So
Yeah, that sounds great.
Brilliant. All right, mate. Sounds like fun. Thanks, mate.
Hey guys, we are on episode 7, and today is a great episode because we actually have Renne Altakrity. This name has become somewhat well known because she was the woman with the placard going against government overreach. She wants to go outside, be with the kids, hang out, you know, no more government overreach, and unfortunately her son was there. We did have a couple of audio issues, but it is fantastic for me to introduce this segment because it's great to see another woman actually doing something. Check it out.
So, Renne Altakrity, you hit the news this week. You hit the media this week with your run-in with the law. Tell us who you are, what happened, what motivated you to go out and wear a sign, and we'll talk about it and go from there.
Yep. So my name's Renne. As you know, I'm a mother of 3 young boys under 6. And as you've seen, Isaac, he's my middle one. He's my 4-year-old. So probably about maybe 8 weeks ago, I really felt moved with the whole COVID, lockdown rules and restrictions. And I call them rules and restrictions, they're not law. And that's where I just want people to sort of start, opening their minds up to really what's happening and where the so-called authorities, or they act like authorities, what is going on, where has that shift, where did that change happen? I believe that change with the authorities happened probably decades ago, but when's it going to stop? And at what point do we sort of sit back and accept it and sit in our homes under unlawful house arrest and say, yes, sir, 3 bags full? Or do we get up and do something about it and actually look at the law, the true law, which is our constitutional law, and look at who is within their rights to actually uphold that? And last I checked, we were actually sovereign to our constitutional law being upheld, and the police, their job is to ensure that they are protecting us. And, the movements around the whole COVID thing didn't sit right with me. I went on to knowyourrightsgroup.com.au, listened to a few of the podcasts, got really, really motivated by it. And, got the book, the CD, started listening to it. And this is, mind you, all happening in the last sort of 2 months. I was actually in Queensland over the Easter for a couple of weeks with the kids. And I had a few awakening moments down there, just really getting back to my roots and being down at the beach every day and just really surrendering to everything that was going on. And, just that sometimes, I don't know if there's a lot of people who aren't religious out there. I'm not, I've got a belief, and just really tuning into that and saying, Renne, what's your purpose? There is something that we're meant to be doing here. And I really felt to do not a protest as such, but something. I had to do something. I had to have my voice somewhere. So I actually found Victor Tay from Exercise Your Rights and had a look at some of his videos, and they're really cool, like family environments. Are walking down, people could join, people could do what they, choose if they wanted to go down there and exercise and, holding signs. So I thought, I love my exercise. It's a great opportunity for me. And on my way out of the door on that Saturday morning on the 9th of May, my 4-year-old son says, Mum, I really want to come and exercise my rights. And we did up a sign for him about the skate parks and the parks. And that was something that was passionate to him and to me as well, because that's where my boys get their enjoyment from. And off we go down there, and just everyone's seeing the footage. We're walking up and down very peacefully, up and down the street. There's footage of me even, liaising with the officers and not having any dramas at all. I asked them, am I being detained? And am I free to go? Am I committing any crime? And, I was answered no on everything. And at one stage I even said, I'll be continuing to exercise then. Thanks very much. Have a beautiful day. I'm doing this for not only my kids, but your kids too. On my way. And then the officer, O'Donnell, made a phone call, and you can see that on some of the footage. Who that phone call was to, I don't know, but that's obviously, something's happened there. And within, 10-15 minutes of me walking up the street and back down, I was crossing the road to go home, back to my car with Isaac, pressed the buzzer to cross the road into Martin Place, and that's when I was taken off the road, put back onto the sidewalk, and it all went south from there. And it was mainly, Dean, around the fact that I was asking, like, what rule? What are you trying to find me on? It was like they had to go home with something. And we're peacefully walking. There was families there. Like, let us move. We have a right to walk up and down the street. Don't obstruct our movement. We're not breaking the law. You don't need to, like, my idea of police presence being there, because I've never been to a protest, and I'm not, or a rally, and I'm not going to call it that. It was an exercising your rights walk with a family environment. But my idea of why police are at protests is to protect the people that are there, having their freedom of speech, in case other people come in who are against what they're maybe, their freedom of speaking about, and there might be breakouts that way. So I actually thought police were there to protect us, and they should be, right? Yeah?
That's what our taxpayers' dollars there to fund, mate.
Sorry?
That's what our taxpayer dollars are supposed to be for.
Yeah, well, the shame about all of this is that, I was taken down in such a horrific thing over $1,000 fine. That's not even legal, and law, pertains to the true law anyway. So the $1,000 fine is obviously going to be disputed. I don't think with much effort to dispute it and overturn it. But if that's what they're capable of doing, and I was a target, and I feel I was a target, I'll say that openly and honestly. There was other families there. There was other people there walking with families. That's a real sick place to be coming from. It's an evil, evil thing to have happened. And I just, you replay it over in your head, and you try and ask yourself why, and you'll never find the answers. But the only thing I can take from it, Dean, is the fact that I need to say, right, it's happened. And there's a lot of people out there that's, protest against the fact that I had my son there. Well, hey, people die more in car accidents. Am I going to say, well, why are you putting your kid in the car? Because that's a risk. It's a higher risk than going down the street, exercising your rights, and having such a traumatic event like that happen. I know a lot more people that have car accidents and get injured. So, and my son's got a freedom of speech as well. Like, he's got a voice too. He specifically said to me, Mum, I want the parks and the skate parks open back up. And all in the name of what I feel, fake numbers, phony numbers going around to scare the shit out of people. It's not right. We're being lied to. If people just think outside the box and stop watching mainstream media and use a bit of intelligence and educate themselves and make informed decisions on what's really happening out there, I think there'd be a lot more people who would be joining us in the streets, walking and exercising our rights. Because if you really know what's going on out there and you become awakened, that's empowering stuff, and people need to start doing that and thinking outside the box. And, that's the awareness I was trying to bring.
Yeah, there's a huge argument for that. As a libertarian, or a moderately prominent libertarian, I'm very supportive of your right to free speech and everybody else's. Have you been political before?
Never. I know nothing about politics, Dean. You could, and I don't think what's happening, you know, yes, the politicians are trying to run us and rule us, and that's all wrong. And, you know, but I know nothing about politics. If you asked me who the premier of certain state was, I'd be like, well, I wouldn't have a clue. All I know is I got rights that are being, you know, stood on by unlawful and fictitious and treason committing government. That's all I know, and that's what I stand for. You know, I know jack all about politics.
You're not missing much.
No. Yeah, I don't think so. You know, I feel within myself that I'm on the right track with my intuition. I've always had a really strong intuition with things, and yeah, it's all about just urging people to tap into the truth, and the media definitely doesn't give that. Yeah, and I've learnt that firsthand this week. You know, they harassed my son and I. They knew what Isaac had been through. They turned up on my doorstep Monday morning. I'm trying to get out of the house, and Isaac's in my arms crying, and they still were trying to talk to me. So I don't know why people aren't back on the journo saying, hang on, you've just seen what this boy's gone through, yet you're up at his doorstep, he's crying in his mum's arm, and you're still trying to talk to the mother for a freaking story. You know, I think that's a lot more to pounce onto someone knowing the child's already suffered a trauma, you know, that was out of my control. And yet they trespass on my property and, you know, hounding me for a story. Thanks a lot, guys, you know, and they get no backlash on that because they control the narrative, you know, the narrator. So yeah, it's unfair. And that's why I'm just urge people, don't watch your TVs. You know, the minute I hear someone turn on my TV and I start hearing when the journos start talking about the COVID stuff, and I call it COVID, nice little phrase I got from Cole, the guy who got taken down in the Melbourne one. You know, yeah, big void of information. You know, it's just when you hear the journos talk about this stuff on the TV, you can hear the fear they're driving into the people, the wrong and lies that they're driving. You can just hear the fear in their voice that they're trying to put through to the viewers. And I just say, turn that stuff off. That's just, whoa, that gives me shivers up my spine, like just to hear why they're driving fear into people, when if you look at the stats, it's like 0.03%. You know, of the whole population, and they call that a pandemic. You know, more people, freaking 4 times the amount of people die from the flu every year. But we don't shut down the world. We don't close down all the businesses. We don't pull all the kids back from school and tell everyone to put a respirator on because, you know, so yeah, definitely pandemic, I think, is the word for it.
Well, there's no doubt that there's a lot of dishonesty as to what's going on. To do what you've done takes a certain amount of bravery. Some would say stupidity. I'm sure you've been called a lot of things. Anyone who stands up does. How are you coping with it, and how are you finding it?
You know what? I don't even look at all the, what do they call it, trolling or the haters. It's got no place in my life. I'm a very positive person. If you want to bring positive to the table, or you want to bring a nice debate and do it in an educated way without the name calling and the this and that, the names and the uncalled for phrases, you know, fine, bring the debate through. I'll send you through all my literature that I've been researching over the last couple of months. You know, because I sure as hell can guarantee that those same people that are doing all the hate stuff haven't actually done their research, because if they had, they'd be opened up to a whole new world. So yeah, I just don't let it bother me. And you know what, Dean, I've got so many people from all over the world that are actually there fighting that battle for me. You know, they're messaging back with them, and even then I say, guys, stop, don't worry about it. You know, you can't force people to be in the awakened state. You can't force it. You know, there's good, there's evil, and there's the bench warmers. And, you know, you're not going to win everyone, and that's not how life's meant to go. You know, if you look at every video, every movie, every cartoon, there's a good and there's a bad. And I'm lucky I'm on the good side.
I'm not what you'd call an anti-vaxxer, but I certainly am sceptical of injecting myself with anything. And I'm even more sceptical of allowing our governments to forcibly inject me with anything. So would you consider yourself an anti-vaxxer or something similar to that?
No, look, you know, like I support anyone who's actually looked into the actual ingredients, the research, and they've made their own decision. And it's all about informed consent. When you go into a doctor's surgery and, you know, you're about to go get your vaccination, whatever it may be, no one explains to you the ingredients or gives you the insert on the pack. Why not? And I bet you my entire life savings and my house, if you gave those doctors a form to sign that they would put, you know, $1 million on the line or $500,000 on the line and sign you know, accept what do you call it when you take on responsibility, that if an injury, a death, or a adverse effect were to occur from the vaccine, I bet you they wouldn't sign it. No way. And let's face it, these doctors do half a day of training in their whole, you know, 6 to 8 years of medical training. They do half a day on vaccines, and it's not about the ingredients. It's about how to administer them and putting pressure on the clients on why they need it. So I'm very pro-choice and all about medical freedom. At never stage have I ever said, oh, I'm anti-vax, I'm just pro-choice and medical freedom, informed consent.
So informed consent, which I'd agree with. I'm not anti-vaccine, I'm not pro-vaccine, whatever, but I'm very much against government mandating what you should and should not take into your body.
Nuremberg Code, everyone needs to read it. And it's all in our constitution too. Yeah.
Yeah. We definitely need more informed people in our society, but this could help trigger it, hopefully.
I hope so, God willing. I really hope so. Yeah.
So your next step, what's next for you with this movement?
Yeah, look, I don't know, Dean, where this is taking me. I'm just going to be patient and know that whatever's meant to come from this will come. I don't know what that is. You know, whether or not I can maybe work with a couple of big names from overseas and try and bring a bit more awareness to Australia. I feel that's sort of coming to my mind. We'll see. I just don't know at this stage where it's gonna take me. I just have to be patient on that one. I had no plans. I didn't plan to be arrested on Saturday, so yeah, I just don't know.
Didn't plan on becoming the poster girl for this whole thing then?
No, that's for sure.
Well, man, as things go along, it's going to be interesting to see how it all unfolds. Where me and my little team are hoping to put together some more digital events with some of the Melbourne guys and some people who don't agree with us, because that's always a key element. Find alternative voices, and we'd love to have you involved in that if you'd be keen.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, definitely. With you all the way. If we can stand united, I think that's amazing.
Yeah, look, that'll be fantastic. But I appreciate you coming on and doing this tonight.
Yeah, 100%.
Is there anything else you'd like to leave these guys with?
No, not at all. For those who are maybe, look, you can't bring the evil over and the bad over, but the people who are sitting and open to learning more, there's a lot of intelligent people out there who want to have more information. You know, I'd say go over to knowyourrightsgroup.com.au. Mike Palmer's got some really good stuff available for people who are wanting to know more. And just start digging. You know, you might find yourself down a few rabbit holes that you don't want to, you know, you can't turn out of. You can't. If you are about truth and integrity and upholding your rights, you can't turn out of these rabbit holes. But the information is good. You just have to take it and use it in a positive way, and stand with the people, you know, who are going to be beside you. Don't worry about what people think. Opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one. You know, you can't worry about that. This is your life. You've got one shot. It's not a dress rehearsal. So, yeah, that's all I've got to say. And thanks everyone for their support and encouragement. It means a lot to me.
No, look, thank you very much. It's always good. Even the people I disagree with, I still sort of support them when they have solid conviction. I'd still rather support somebody with a solid conviction who I differ with than someone who agrees with everything I say but has no conviction. You're a credit in this capacity. I really appreciate your time, and hopefully we can work together on some projects going forward.
Great. Look forward to it, Dean. Thanks very much for reaching out. Take care, and we'll be in touch.
No worries. Thank you very much.
If any of you Resolute TV viewers have enjoyed any of our guests, be sure to subscribe and follow them on all of their respective social media links. See you later, guys.